I can't remember.
Oh, no. Not by yourself, trust me. Most of the tour guides won't even do that. You think I'm joking or not? Okay, let me explain where we are. I need to give you a brief history lesson. I'm afraid it's not a nice piece of history. Early 1600s, Charles is on the throne. Charles thinks not only is he king, he's head of the church, and it is up to him how every single individual person in Britain worships God. He wants us all to worship the same way. He wants us up here in Scotland to worship the way they do in England. He wants us to become Episcopalian. We don't want that. We've already had a major religious reform. We're all Presbyterian up here. So he decides he's going to enforce this change without telling us. Introduces a tax called annuity. Doesn't tell us what it's for. We all pay it. And then one Sunday, everybody in Scotland goes to their church service. Their prayer books have changed. The Mass has been changed. The entire service is Episcopalian. We're very angry. Riots break out, including a huge one at St Giles, where we started our tour, where a lady called Jenny Geddes is very famously said to have stood up off her stool during the service. She picked up her stool and she threw it at the minister's head, telling him he was speaking the words of the devil. A group of people gathered together in this graveyard, and leaning on the tabletop tombstones, they drafted a document called the National Covenant. It's a contract between those who signed it and God. It states they liked the king, they would follow him if he stopped trying to enforce religious change. That had nothing to do with him, only God. Anyone who signed it is referred to as a Covenanter. This led to the English Civil War. Lots of battles were fought, including one at Bothwell Brig. And after that, 1,200 Scottish Covenanters, the fighting men and their families, were captured, marched here and imprisoned within these walls. And the mausoleums were not here. It wasn't used as burial ground back then. It was just this field with a wall around it, so they had no shelter. They were given 4 ounces of bread and water a day, a loaf of bread that would basically fit into the palm of my hand. If they moved, if they spoke, they were shot by soldiers who stood at those gates with muskets. And for a lot of their time in here, I have been told, they were forced to lie face down on the ground without moving and without speaking. After 5 months, of those 1,200, there were only 257 left. The rest had died in the conditions, been executed for their crimes, or they had said they would change religion and they'd signed a form stating that. But 257 was still in here, given one last opportunity to change religion. They refused. The king was so angry, he decided they were to be sold as slaves in the American colonies, crammed them all into the hold of a ship which crashed off the coast of Orkney, killing all but 43 of them. 43 out of 1,200. I'm not a Christian. I hope it doesn't offend anybody here. I do not believe in God, but I have nothing but respect for these men. They gave up their entire lives. All they had to do is sign a piece of paper, go to a slightly different church service where they would have still worshipped the same God, but they refused because their belief was so incredibly strong, and for that, they were killed. No wonder this place is so full of negativity. I don't know if you can feel it. A lot of people say as soon as they step through that gate, something just feels different. We think all that negative energy is what makes our poltergeist so incredibly strong. A poltergeist would normally last a couple of months at most. Ours has been here now for 11 years. It's phenomenal. Now, his attacks all happen in here. We call it the Black Mausoleum, not because of the family, but because it does get very dark inside. Luckily, it's still quite light, so you should be able to see. We're going to head in now. However, because there are a large group of us, there are some things I need to ask of you. First of all, I know it can be very funny to poke your friend in the back and pretend it's not you, it's the poltergeist. Please don't. It's funny for about 5 seconds, and then they panic, and then they scream. Everybody else screams, including the person that's doing the prodding, by the way. You all stampede towards the door, which means it doesn't end well for me, so please don't do that. Also, People always say, do people really pass out on this tour? Yes. I've had lots and lots of people being knocked out on my tours. And 9 times out of 10, when it happens, it goes unnoticed unless they actually collapse on top of somebody else. I need to be able to see as many of your faces as possible. So if you do get attacked, I can see what's happening. So what we need to do, we need to get the tallest of you in first, get you in and kind of line the walls, short people standing in front of them. Use as much room as possible. It is a bit of a TARDIS effect. It's much bigger than it looks, everybody. We're going to head inside now. You're ready?
That's taller than you.
That's it. If you know you're taller, then head in first. Look at this tall bloke here. Is looking all nervous. Come on. She went into the underground by herself.
I'm going.